Pokemon XD was a game that came out for the GameCube all the way back in 2005. It is mostly remembered for its unique Shadow Pokemon mechanic as well as its reliance on double battles. But it had one minigame that people still talk about to this day. I am of course talking about Battle Bingo. Battle Bingo was a unique minigame found in the Real whatever tower, and offered a unique way of playing the game in a fun and easy to understand way. Like many people who played XD, I sank my fair share of time into this minigame to the point that it stopped appealing to me. But then I discovered something that made it interesting once again. Enter XG. Pokemon XG is a ROM hack of XD that updates the game from the ground up. Typings are updated, moves are added to the game for more recent games, and some Pokemon actually get completely new typings that they don't have in current day. The creator of XG could have stopped there and called it a day, but they decided to give Battle Bingo a facelift as well and created something that proved to be interesting, challenging, and refreshing. This video covers this revamped Battle Bingo from beginning to end. You'll see all the new cards, the new Pokemon in each card, and, of course, the many fails and lucky moments that define my journey through this weird, hostile landscape. With all that being said, let's hop straight in. To kick us off, I feel it necessary to talk about what Battle Bingo actually is. Battle Bingo features a series of 4x4 cards, each with either a Pokemon or mystery tile in each slot. The goal is to get as many bingos across this board as possible, and a reward is distributed at the end depending on the number of bingos that were made. These coupons that are awarded can then be used in Mount Battle to buy held items and evolution items, making it quite the enticing activity for boosting the power of your party during your playthrough. You start each Battle Bingo board with a single Pokemon and 2 Master Balls, and each Pokemon you get starts with 2 EP, basically meaning you can use it twice. To recharge your Pokemon, you can either make a bingo, giving you the opportunity to distribute an EP point, or you can flip one of the random tiles and receive either 1 or 2 EPs. Additionally, one of the random tiles will always have a Master Ball, giving you the chance to have 4 Pokemon in your party instead of 3. Between all of these mechanics, it is 100% possible to get a full 10-line bingo on every single board, but it requires a decent bit of thought, planning, and as I learned, luck. With the mechanics covered, let's get this journey underway. When you first start Battle Bingo, you only have access to 3 cards in the easiest category. In XG, our choices were Bagon, Magnemite, shoutouts to the best Pokemon in the game, and Nuzleaf. Since Bagon was on the far left, I decided to go with it. Bagon's board turned out to rightly be the basic board designed for any noob with no knowledge to succeed in being a card. It has your basic water, fire, and grass combos and is about as simple as you can get. At least that's what it seemed like on the surface. Picking a water tile, I was greeted by a Marill. I threw my first Master Ball to get our first extra Pokemon and then moved north to get a Cyndaquil as well. After defeating this poor Bulbasaur, we got another Master Ball and then things started to go south. So because of how I had moved, I was basically backed into a corner to catch a grass type, which I thought would be fine, but it turned out to be Sunkern. Without the Sunkern, I was going to run out of EP, which would have ended my run. But even though it was a Sunkern, I thought it would still be good enough to fight. I was very wrong. I queued up Sunkern into a Totodile, opened the attack moves, and yeah. The only move it had is Leech Seed. Oh my god! What followed was a very agonizing 4 minutes of watching a Totodile slowly get leeched down by a corn kernel with a sadistic smile. It was agonizing. I hated every second of it, and I finally started to wonder if not everything on this board was actually useful. Somehow we managed to beat the Totodile purely because it couldn't beat us through Leech Seed healing. And then I looked at my team. Yep, Marill has baby doll eyes. It literally cannot fight. While this seems like a disaster, it actually was completely fine because Bagon is a champ. Turns out they designed this board to literally be beatable with nothing but Bagon, so I proceeded to load Bagon up with every EP point I got and Dragon Breath everything out of existence. It was boring. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't feel challenged. By the time I was done, I literally stopped recording. It was at this point that I thought to myself, do I really want to make a video on this misery? Are all these boards going to suck? When I was younger, I remember enjoying Battle Bingo, so I decided to give it one last attempt and see if the other boards sucked or if it got better. Thankfully, it got way better. Starting back up, we tackled the best Pokemon ever created in all of Pokemon's history, and it's not even close, Magnemite. Magnemite ended up on a board with Fighting, Flying, Rock, and 1 Normal type, for some reason. Anywho, we started off by going after a Flying tile since Magnemite did in fact have an electric move. It was a Pidgey. Anyway, after obliterating the Pidgey, I picked another flying type tile. My reasoning for holding the Master Ball was that I knew one of these flying type tiles had to be something wild, just because of how the other board went, and I was right. Turns out, I had stumbled onto a Gligar, something that proved to be a Giga Chad throughout the rest of this bingo card. We then moved on to a fighting card that had a Machop, decimated it with Bulldoze, and then proceeded to chip the nose right off a Nose Pass. With our extra EP, we got Gligar into a fight against a Makuhita, which we caught. Turns out, this guy would have one-shot our Gligar, so that was lucky. Getting a Master Ball, we entered a rock tile and found a Lunatone, something I was very excited about, and for good reason. With its psychic typing, that meant Lunatone could theoretically decimate fighting types. However, this was a double-edged sword due to the rock weakness, so each fight was a little tense. Getting a second bingo, we used Lunatone to slowly beat a Meta-type, Makuhita, Ice a Zubat, and then finally poked the normal tile with a Gligar. It was a Swablu. Gligar only had Bulldoze. Use thorough analysis to figure out why I then had to bail on the fight. After beating the Swablu with something that wasn't a ground type, we proceeded to destroy an Anorith, punch a Rhyhorn in the kidney, slap a Larvitar like it said something about my mama, and turn a Mankey inside out, thereby completing the board with all 10 bingos. With 2 of the 3 boards done, it was time to confront the Nuzleaf card. This card featured Water, Ground, and Electric. Right off the bat, there were 2 concerns I had, Lantern and Quagsire / Marshtomp. Lantern was going to be vulnerable to ground types, which would make it bad to use on this board, and the presence of a ground water typing meant I needed to be careful with Nuzleaf. After debating where to start, I decided to open on a ground tile. It is at this point in the video where I need to go ahead and explain something. My top 3 favorite Pokemon are as follows in no particular order. Magnemite, obviously, Nidorina, and Steelix. If I see these Pokemon in the wild, I have a legally binding obligation to catch them, and guess what was in this tile? Yep, we're catching that. This would prove to be my undoing on this board. After catching the Steelix, we moved on to the water tile beside it. Oh boy, yep. This is the Lantern I wanted to avoid capturing, and we didn't really have a choice but to capture it. Anyway, so we catch Lantern and move down. After demolishing a Graveler, we run into the first problem on this board, a Gyarados. This Gyarados has Bounce, which means Nuzleaf dies. At this point, I decided to try and get an Electric type move to try and take it down. So I go up, click this tile, and send in Steelix. It's a Magneton with Flash Cannon. While it's not effective against Steel, it's better than my Iron Head is against Magneton, so I'm forced to either catch it or wipe. At this point, I know I'm screwed. I don't have a good option for Gyarados, and I'm running out of EP fast. After clearing out a water and electric tile, I finally decided that my only option is to throw Steelix at Gyarados. This turned into an all-out slog of a fight that could have gone awfully. After a whole lot of back and forth, Steelix just barely managed to steal the win, seemingly winning me the board. That was not the case. After taking out a Pupitar and a Piloswine, I was left with 1 EP for 1 Pokemon. Taking out the bottom left corner would give me another EP and open up another EP afterwards, giving me a way to finish the board. Thinking a ground type would work best, I queued up for it and was met by a terrifying sight. Manectric. Earlier in my XD playthrough, I was using an Electric that had Heat Wave on it, so I was instantly worried that it would have a Fire type move. Thankfully, I was right, because I hate being wrong. It had Overheat and promptly blew my Steelix into thousands of tiny pieces and ended my run. I did not waste any time getting back into a new run, and this is where I learned that the boards are not randomized. They are set in stone every single run, which I personally think is hugely limiting to their replayability, but whatever. Learning from my mistake, I did not want Steelix this time, but I did retake the Lantern. I knew that I had 2 issues to solve, the Manectric and the Gyarados. Fortunately, I knew what I needed for both now. This time around, we caught the Flaffy, obliterated the Graveler once again, and then used Flaffy to fry the Gyarados. With the glorified snake out of the way, it was time to come up with a solution for Manectric. After a lot of thinking and scratching my head and planning and design, and I just caught it. Yeah, I just caught it because I couldn't think of anything better to catch, and I didn't see a way to easily dismantle it. With Manectric beaten, this board was basically done. We destroyed the Magneton, found the Marshtomp I had been looking for, and destroyed it with Nuzleaf, then mopped up the others we had already seen. Bottom right tile was a Lombre, which Flaffy just barely beat, and the final electric was a Pikachu, which we barbecued. And with that, the easy boards were out of the way. Outside of the Bagon board, they were reasonably interesting and required some thought. At this point, I was glad I hadn't given up after the Bagon, but I was now scared of what was coming next. If this Nuzleaf board could be this tricky, then what awaited us on the next set? Yep, this is the next set. Why is there a Butterfree? And Sableye? Oh boy. I started off again with the far left and picked Alakazam, revealing a Psychic, Dark, and Poison themed board. Right off the bat, I wasn't sure what to do. It made sense to start with a Poison type, but I knew that wouldn't necessarily help against the Dark type problem. I decided to throw a dart at random and pick the bottom left to start because of the mystery tiles that were around it. This led me against the Crobat. Crobat was way faster than us and had Brave Bird. Somehow we survived with just a sliver of health and managed to revenge kill it. What a way to start a board. From here, we proceeded straight north, acquired some EP and a Shiftry, and then smacked Shiftry into a Claydol. From here, we then went right. For some reason, I decided to use Alakazam. I figured it would be decent enough picked against the target because I was afraid of running into a Gardevoir. Oh my god, our Alakazam turned shiny? Well, there you go, folks. Whenever you send a Pokemon out in Battle Bingo, it can randomly be shiny, even if it wasn't before. Go figure. With Grumpig gone, we sent Alakazam against Muck, which nearly killed us again and made me really start questioning my high opinion of Alakazam overall. In the next Psychic Tile, we found a Medicham, which I instantly thought would be good against the Dark types as long as it outsped them. At this moment in time, I didn't know what was here, so I caught it with a happy smile on my face. This will not last. At the next Psychic Tile, we ran into a Metang and were forced to catch it because I didn't have anything that could bring it down. And at long last, I finally targeted this isolated Dark type tile. Now, you may be wondering why I'm making this so dramatic. This tile housed a Sharpedo, which had Crunch and was really fast. Turns out this thing ended up being the big terror of the board. Trying to bring this thing down was nearly impossible. Not only was it fast, but it kept getting crits on me as well as defense downs, meaning nothing I had was beating it without luck. I decided to pause this and move on. We ended up using Alakazam to ice a Snake. Metang took down the dreaded Gardevoir, as well as an Absol and a Sneasel. After going back to Sharpedo once again and dying again, I took out the Victory Bell and then seriously had to think about how to beat the Sharpedo. After doing some number crunching, my only chance, literally my only chance, was Medicham. If Sharpedo didn't get crit or defense down on me, I won every single time, so I just needed to fight it over and over until luck decided to not screw me. Against all odds, I managed to Drain Punch the Sharpedo twice and finished off the board. Up next was the Sableye board, which was called Immunity. Given the name, my instant thought was that I'd have to worry about the King of Immunity, a Shedinja. Thanks to its ability and typing, Shedinja can only be damaged by very specific moves, so I was mindful of this the entire board. Starting off, we chose to go for a normal type card and potentially catch whatever it was. It wasn't this time that I learned Sableye's move is Toxic. Oh, and Wigglytuff has Play Rest, so guess what we're catching? Next up was the Gengar card, which I caught instantly thinking it would be useful. I was wrong. We used Gengar to take down a Mischievous, which was fine, but then the fighting card was a Blaziken with Blaze Kick, which annihilated Gengar. This was the fastest wipe of any board I played on, even later in this video. Round 2, we still catch the Wigglytuff, but this time we go down to a Pidgeot, catch that, and then annihilate the Gengar with it. We then go down to get a Master Ball and fight the fighting type. Hey, wait a minute. Is that a shiny Hariyama? I guess that can happen too. Huh. Anyway, we turned the shiny into a puddle and move on. Next, we annihilated a Zangoose, got some EP, and then fought a Dusclops with Destiny Bond. This proved to be pointless. It just fell over. It did nothing. Destiny Bond did nothing in this situation. I don't know why I had it. It just had it. Moving on, we obliterate an Exploud and then click on this normal tile here. It's a Slacking. So the problem is this Slacking has Giga Impact, which one-shots everything on my team except Sableye, which has no EP, and there is no other EP source. I have no choice at this point but to catch the Slacking. I thought this would be a disaster, but it turned out to be an ace against literally anything that wasn't a ghost type, including the fighting types. After demolishing a Mischievous, Breloom, Bennett, I fought the final Pokemon. It was a Machamp. There was no Shedinja on the Shedinja-themed board. I was fully and thoroughly tricked. All that careful movement, all the planning, all the worrying, everything. There was no point to any of it. Anyway, next. Now we move on to the tile I was genuinely curious about. Why a Butterfree? What could its theme be? What would a Butterfree be? Oh, it's Oops All Bugs. Now I get it. Since this was Oops All Bugs, all I could do was throw a dart randomly and hope what I picked had something really good on it. Fortunately, I literally did just that and bullseyed an Armaldo, a rock bug type with Stone Edge. Basically, this thing can one-shot almost any other bug in existence, and it proved to be huge on this board. We used it to beat a Beedrill and capture a Scizor, and then got super unlucky with a Heracross that had Rock Blast. Unfortunately, it landed Rock Blast over and over and over and over, max each time, and pulverized Armaldo, which was just unfortunate. After wiping the Heracross, we proceeded to eliminate a Scyther, Beautifly, Ninjask, and then caught the Heracross to avoid a repeat of the Rock Blast situation. The rest of this board wasn't much to talk about. Masquerain was annihilated, Pinsir got squished, Shekel dodged a ridiculous number of stone edges before finally getting the boot, and Ariados might as well have just deleted itself. And that was it. We beat all the regular boards with only a minor amount of headache, and now it was time to move on to the big leagues. The next set of cards offered us a really enticing mix of mons. We had to choose between Pidgeot, Dragonite, and Slaking. A very interesting combo that left me with mixed feelings. As per usual, we started with the far left. This card was themed around having a useless starter, so we needed to catch something and ditch Pidgeot immediately. This meant we were entirely relying on RNG, and, well, it didn't go so well for us. We started in the bottom left because of the positioning of the random tiles, as well as the fact that most of the things on this board were going to be weak to steel. Turns out this Registeel was a super good mon with a fighting type move, something that would crack an ice water type that I had a feeling was going to show up. We then got a Skarmory, some EP, and then ran face first into something that was way more terrifying than I initially thought. Omastar is a Pokemon that I honestly just ignored. It's not that great normally, but in Battle Bingo it turned out to be a monster. But we RNG'd it to death with Skarmory thanks to Ironhead flinches and just moved on thinking that there was no big deal. Oh boy, did this end up biting me later on because I completely wrote this thing off. After Omastar, we moved right and found Lapras, which had Hydro Pump. This thing proved to only be beatable by Registeel, and even then it just barely squeaked by. We then went north, found a Regice, which we barely beat, a Sneasel that folded like paper, and then went to the top left corner to take Aggron. After that, we beat a Tyranitar and then got some bad news. The next rock tile had a Regirock. Normally, Regirock is a terrible legendary that no one cares about, but with what we had, it was a monster that bodied everything I had, forcing a wipe. Our next few attempts, yes, attempts with an S, were all about trying to beat this Regirock. I would like to take this moment to remind everyone that there was an Omastar on the board. Did I think to use it? Nope. On my second attempt, I started with a steel tile that had a Steelix with Earthquake. I thought I was doing fantastic, and for a while, it went great. We took down the Regirock, caught and fought our way down to Registeel, and then got obliterated by Omastar. Now, on a third attempt, I got Registeel to start because I knew I needed it for the Lapras, and then I learned my lesson and tried to catch the Omastar. I'm just kidding, I tried to feint it again and failed. Anyway, we kept going, went through a Glalie and a Rhydon with Horn Drill, took out the Regice, and then finally developed a Brain Cell. Yes, I got the Omastar at last. There is nothing worth talking about after this because Omastar demolished everything. If it was weak to water, Omastar obliterated it. I attribute this to most of the opponents on this board being weak to special attacks. Omastar having a high special and decently high speed, and a killer defense stat. Why this never occurred to me until now, I will never understand, but at least we beat the stupid board. Our next card was the Dragonite card. At a glance, I'm sure this board looks diverse. Wrong. It's all dragons, or things that be construed as dragons, and dragon relatives, and every How to Train Your Dragon fan's wet dream. I had no idea where to start, so I just started top right with a dragon. Yep, that's an Altaria. Fun fact, in XG, Altaria got an update to be a fairy dragon typing. My plan to quickly kill it and move on turned into a forced capture, but getting a fairy type wasn't the worst thing to happen, so the salt level stayed low. We then encountered a Feraligatr. What? With an ice type move. What? Which sounded great, but it hit like a wet noodle. What? So we took it out as well as the Charizard and then found a Latios with Ice Beam. Yes, I was very excited at this point. We'll use this Latios to ice, get it, a Latios and complete another bingo line. With what I had access to, I had to confront a water tile, which I figured would have a water dragon. And I was right when I found a Kingdra. Fortunately, it had Hydro Pump, so Dragonite took care of it with ease. Next up was a Sceptile. Yep, a Sceptile. Guess what got retyped to be a dragon? Yes, it fainted in one hit. Moving on, we iced a Flygon, found a Salamence hiding in a flying tile, and then smacked into an Aggron that we were forced to catch since I didn't have a counter. The rest of this board was basically done at this point. We found a Dragonite that Latios decimated, an Aerodactyl that Aggron countered, and a Tyranitar that Aggron also countered. With that board done, there was one left, and it turned out to be the pseudo-legendary board. Except I wasn't expecting pseudo-legendaries because the card was named Legend, so I went in expecting each card to be a full legendary. This led me to make choices I probably wouldn't have made in hindsight. I picked a Dragon tile to start, thinking I'd find Latios or Latios, but nope, it was a Dragonite. This was not so great start, especially since we had to catch it to avoid wiping. We then caught a Tyranitar in the bottom left with Stone Edge, which set us up way better for most of the threats we would encounter on this board, but I was sorely aware that I needed a fire type to handle the steel types. This led me to go to the ice type tile, which I knew was either Articuno or Regice, took out the Articuno, got an EP, took out a Raikou, got the other two mystery tiles, and then took out Moltres because of its flying typing. I figured Entei would get me better mileage, so I decided to take out the Zapdos and the electric tile and then catch Entei. This proved to be a problem. That also proved to be a solution later on. Go figure. This Zapdos hit hard, and with some bad luck on account of me missing, I was forced to capture it. At the time, I thought this was a disaster, but Zapdos proved to be a behemoth. Additionally, it turns out that this Entei had Flare Blitz, so it would have been a bad choice anyway for the board state. With Entei out, we took out the Regice with Tyranitar, the Suicune with Zapdos, and then both the steel types, Registeel and Metagrouse, with Zapdos. Turns out, Thunder is fantastic on a giant Thunder Chicken. With that, we took out Salamence with Tyranitar, and then had to face the final boss. Since this was seemingly the last card of Battle Bingo, the atmosphere was tense. I knew this had to be a Regirock, and given my experience with it before, I knew it was going to be a behemoth, and I had nothing to counter it. This was going to come down to nothing but luck, and Tyranitar was the best bet. Tyranitar at least resisted Stone Edge, and with its huge attack stat, that basically meant it was a game of hoping Regirock missed. That's what this came down to. He needed to miss, and I needed to hit. We attacked it over and over and over again, even experimenting with some of my other party members, and it seemed like it wasn't going to work out. I kept getting unlucky with the misses, and it seemed as if all hope was lost, but then it finally missed. I popped off and the Regirock finally went down. The sense of relief I felt was amazing. Seemingly, we had beaten Battle Bingo. All the cards were out of the way, and after recording for many straight hours, I was looking forward to kicking back and oh no. So, in my elation, I completely forgot that in the original XD game, there was a final bonus card containing a Bonsly. Well, in XG, it had a Mew. My first reaction was, how bad can a Mew be? What do they do with a Mew? Surely it can't be that bad. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mew card was none other than the true brass knuckle boxing match of a legendary card. Every single tile on this board contained a big legendary, including Groudon, Lugia, and Mewtwo. And we were starting off with a freaking Mew. This was going to be a major challenge, and I was not prepared. I started off with a water tile, figuring it had a Kyogre, and it was proven correct. We caught Kyogre and moved down a single tile to encounter a Lugia. Now, Lugia is a strong Pokemon, but not normally a legendary I personally think of when I think scary. As it turns out, however, Aeroblast Lugia in this mosh pit of a bingo card was a Titan. It could tank most things on this board and feint them with Aeroblast. Such flexibility made this thing a requirement, and it very quickly earned its keep. After reducing Celebi to atoms, we ran into a Rayquaza. At first, I thought this was a loss, but it turns out that Lugia beats Outrage Rayquaza in a one-on-one. I was shocked and extremely happy. After grabbing some free EP, we found another Mew, a Master Ball, and a Latios. We then proceeded down the side of the board to an EP, caught a Ho-Oh because Lugia was doing so well, and then Pimp slapped a Deoxys. Then we ran into the problem, Mewtwo. Everyone and their mother knows that Mewtwo is really strong, and I knew it too. Unfortunately, all I had was a Ho-Oh at this point, and it could not beat the Mewtwo, meaning we had to start over. With our second attempt, our mission was clear: figure out how to solve the Mewtwo without losing to everything else on the board. But what among these could actually beat a Mewtwo? Really, the only answer was the second Mew, but since that was only good against a few things, I opted to look for other counters, which led me on an around-the-world trip that lasted a full hour. On our second attempt, I knew the only path forward was to capture the Mewtwo. I started off capturing Lugia before continuing down and around into the Mewtwo to catch it. I then went to take out the Mew and fainted. Yep, the Mew blocked me this time. With no Master Ball and some bad moves, we were forced to reset again. Once again, I started with Lugia, but got Kyogre, took out the Mew, and then instantly got the Master Ball. I cleared out the top row and the left column, then swung over to grab the Mewtwo. Lo and behold, I found another Mew, which Kyogre took out. We then knocked out Groudon, and things were looking pretty wrapped up at this point. We sent Lugia in to handle the Latios, which turned out to be identical to the Latios, decimated the Deoxys, and then fought the Jirachi, the last mon that was hidden from us. This thing turned out to be a counter to Lugia, forcing us to reset and send out Kyogre. It was way closer than it should have been, but Kyogre managed to squeak out the feint on Jirachi, and then at last, one-shot the Ho-Oh with little effort. With the Mew card behind us, Battle Bingo was officially beaten. There were no more cards to unlock, and I felt great. What started off as a boring, mindless slog turned into a surprisingly intellectual and interesting experience where choices mattered and RNG could impact the game. Additionally, we were rewarded with a new Battle Bingo game mode where you were limited to only be able to pick a tile next to the tile you had previously picked, limiting strategic options even further. But I wasn't interested enough to go through all the cards again. Maybe in the future, but for now, our Battle Bingo journey is over. In retrospect, this Battle Bingo experience was completely worth it. I enjoyed the challenge and I enjoyed the twist on the classic Battle Bingo from XD. Seeing the bingo cards refreshed with unique problems to solve for and new Pokemon was entertaining, and I would highly recommend this to anyone playing XG for the first time to fully complete this experience. Also, it's worth mentioning that the rewards were very worth it. Mount Battle has all the held items and evolution items, so this will no doubt end up playing heavily into our actual XG playthrough, which we will be continuing now that Bingo is finally behind us. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, consider liking and subscribing as it helps the channel grow, and I would very much like to do more content in the future. That's all I have for this video, so with all that being said and Battle Bingo finally being defeated, I'll catch y'all in the next video. Cheers!